Welcome back to the channel. Last time I got 40,000 pounds of rocks delivered, and then I shoveled most of those by hand into the first tier of our retaining wall. And today we're going to try to level out this yard, and I have no idea what I'm doing, so let's get into it. As you can see here, it has done nothing but rain the last few days, so this dirt is going to be extremely heavy and unpleasant to deal with. But at this point, we are late in the summer. I've got a bunch of plans towards the end of the summer and into the fall, so I really don't have any time to waste, so let's get shoveling. So let's move into the game plan of how I'm going to get this leveled out. Step one, I don't actually have a step one. I don't have any plan at all other than look at what looks high and what looks low, then use my shovel to move the dirt from those spots that look high over to those spots that look low. The biggest hurdle that we have to get over is this massive pile of dirt that we left to backfill the retaining wall here towards the edge. But overall, there is definitely a gradient from the front corner to the back corner, both going from that white fence closer to the house, as well as from the downhill side going up towards the right side of the screen on the uphill side of my property. So this is sloping in two separate directions, and I'm just trying my best to rip out all these weeds that are invading from all the rainfall, and at least get this level enough as a starting point so that maybe we can make this a useful space at some point. And while this might not look like a whole lot of time on the time lapse, this was about 3 to 3.5 hours of work just to get to this point. As I suspected, this nice, wet, heavy dirt was absolutely miserable and difficult to move, and it was taxing my body way faster than it should have. But as far as a quick job with only a shovel goes, I think this is actually pretty good for a starting point. And I knew not only that we had more work to do, but there was also more rain in the forecast, and that heavy rain would help to compact this dirt and level it out a little bit more. That said, the other holdup we had here is you can see I am several inches short on the back side of this wall here, and that is because we have some final things to pick up from Home Depot. One night and one trip to Home Depot later, and this is what we had picked up. 2 rolls of garden edging, another massive roll of landscaping fabric, a big old bag of seed, a bag of fertilizer. I also bought a gardening rake that I completely forgot to show here, and really the reason I went was to replace this shovel under warranty, but mysteriously in the month or so that I've had this, they've stopped carrying these in stock. And unsurprisingly, with a shovel that was completely mangled, my gloves had also seen better days, so it was time to replace those as well. In total, all of these materials came out to about $250, meaning we were just below our total budget for this project. At this point, I had only about $100 or $150 remaining for my absolute budget cap for what I could afford for this project. So if absolutely anything unexpected comes up at this point, that means I am probably going to be in trouble, which let's just hope is not foreshadowing. But let's jump back into some body-ruining physical labor, starting with putting in this landscaping edging. Now, to be honest, this is actually probably like the least physical part of this project, and this plastic edging comes in these big old rolls. They sit on the shelves like this for so long that when you try to put it in a straight line, they just want to coil up a bit. So pro tip, if you're ever doing edging, just wait for like a really hot day or leave it in the sun for an hour or so. The heat helps you reshape it a lot easier and makes it want to coil up a lot less. That took me a little bit of time to figure out, so I was fighting with it at first, but basically you're going to jam this stuff in place. You want to try to keep it as straight as you can, obviously, and then you're adding about 2 or 3 inches of either dirt or gravel, depending on which side you're on, to try to put some weight on that bottom lip and hold it in place. This is why I didn't put gravel all the way up to that top lip of the retaining wall before. I knew this was going in, I knew I was going to have to put more gravel on top of it, so I didn't want to have to dig that out to get this edging strip in, but now that means I have to go shovel more gravel here and then pour it into those last couple inches on top. Fortunately, that is not a huge volume of gravel compared to what we were filling before, which was literally wheelbarrows full for every single foot that we covered. So much less gravel that we're moving, less strain on the body, and help this go a little bit quicker. Something that's probably worth mentioning here is I'm putting this edging in because I'm leaving that last foot as exposed gravel. I like to have that as like a little accent trim piece. And the other reason I'm doing that personally is so that I don't have grass growing directly up to the back of the retaining wall edge. Because I know when I mow this, the mower's obviously not going to get to that last inch. I'm gonna have to use the weed whacker to get to that. And to be honest, I'm a little worried that the weed whacker is just gonna slowly chip away at the finish on that back edge of the retaining wall and either take chunks out or at the very least get through the stain and leave exposed parts. So not only do I like this as like a barrier and an accent, but it's also gonna prevent me a little bit of maintenance long term by not having to weed whack directly against the back edge of that retaining wall. That said, if you do not like the exposed gravel look, what you can do do is just basically fold landscaping fabric over the top of it and then put 2 to 3 inches of dirt over the top of the gravel at the end. Honestly, you'd spend a little bit more money on landscape fabric, but a lot less money on rocks and that landscaping edging. So really it's up to you of what you think looks better. This was just my personal preference. Getting all of this edging done and then filling that last couple inches with gravel and dirt was about a full day endeavor, and fortunately we hit the end mark right about mid-afternoon. So as is customary, let's go into a couple things that went well and a couple things that maybe didn't go so well.
All right, another good stopping point. We have the edging in on the entire first row. Now over here, we didn't quite fill the entirety of this corner because all of it was flowing out on this side. So I did put this block to stop it. We are going to have to fill this at the end, but this already looks a heck of a lot more finished than it did before that edging was in. And now we have an actual reference line that's level across the entire thing that we know where to fill the dirt up to. So I think once we get that low spot in, this will be pretty close to level, so I'm pretty happy with that. What I'm not happy with is right at the end, as I was doing the last load of gravel, this decided it was done giving its all. I mean, I don't really blame it. I've been beating the absolute crap out of this thing, but now I gotta figure out a way to fix that.
I'll do a separate video on the economics of repairing versus replacing a wheelbarrow, and I will link that video in the description below, but let's just say I tried to repair it and I ended up replacing it anyway. So remember that part that I said we're almost at our budget and hopefully nothing else goes wrong? Well, that went just a little bit very extremely wrong. And after buying the new wheelbarrow, I was 100% at my budget for this project. That said, I've never used a new wheelbarrow before, and oh my god, what a difference. Like, for example, did you know that wheelbarrows are actually supposed to roll? Incredible, really. Absolutely blew my mind. But anyhow, back to leveling out the yard here. When I was putting in this edging strip by the gravel, I made sure that was evenly spaced from the retaining wall and level relative to the top of the retaining wall along the entire distance. That way we basically have a reference line to fill in this dirt to. Like I said earlier, this yard naturally grades in 2 different directions as you go towards either of those fences on the top side of the yard. I knew between that and with how rocky the soil was, I was never going to get this 100% perfectly level, but having a grade of a couple of degrees at most isn't really noticeable to the average person and still makes this a usable space. So even if it isn't perfectly level, as long as it's reasonably flat and doesn't have a really steep slope or any significant drops or dips, it's really not gonna matter, and it's gonna be so much better than it was. And after this last day of working on it, I finally got it to a point that while it wasn't perfect, I was still happy with it. So let's take a closer look at the after results. So here it is, and going down to roughly eye level with this yard, you can see over here on the left it is a little bit low, and as you move over here on the right, there are a couple high spots noticeably right here towards the center. The problem is that entire center is solid rock underneath, and I don't know if you know this about solid rock, but you can't exactly dig through it and move it using a shovel. So that said, we clearly have some high and low spots. This is going to self-level significantly as it rains in the next few days, but really the only options to get it better than this are to lower the high spots, which we can't do because like I said, they are solid rock beneath, or option 2 is to raise up the low spots. Now I'm not going to buy more dirt for this project after paying so much to get rid of the dirt that I had. That doesn't make sense, but around the perimeter we are doing a second tier of this retaining wall, so some of this other dirt that we have has to come out as part of that. So once I dig the trench for the second tier, I'm going to use that dirt to fill these low spots as best as I can, but for now this is about as good as this is going to get. So I'm going to close out this one. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.